And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Ryan Metzler.
Here you can see Nothing Personal set up for a 3-player game. Now the idea of this game is that you're trying to influence different mobsters in order to earn respect for your family. So you're trying to influence them, and doing so will get you respect and money, which you will further use to try and get more respect and more money and so forth and so on, without sending your gangsters to prison or getting them whacked or getting them removed from their position, whatever the case may be. Now, what we can see here is we have a hierarchy of gangsters. We have Killer Mac Fido here at the top, and he's the current capo. He's the leader right now. And then underneath him we have an underboss and a counselor, an enforcer, a racketeer, and a bean counter. And these are all basically the inner circle of mobsters. And these two are under the capo, and then these three are under these two, and so forth and so on. At the bottom we have the first guy, the second guy, and the third guy, who are kind of waiting to be up-and-comers. And then over here we have the associates, who aren't yet in the whole mafia scenario, but they're looking to get in, and they'll get in later when other people end up dead or in jail. So, you have the starting setup. Each player starts with some influence on the mobsters, and you set these up during the setup. So we have the pinkish and orange colors here that are influencing the capo. We have the underboss here, influenced by the same players. The counselor, who is currently influenced by black. We have red here on the enforcer, orange on the racketeer, and black on the bean counter and the second guy. So, you're basically going to control somebody if you have influence majority on them. So black controls these three. This one is controlled by nobody currently, but technically the capo, whoever has the ring, or capo, is going to break ties. So in this case, let's say that red has the tiebreaker. He's going to control both the capo and the underboss. Now, after we've set up, we're going to go on to playing influence cards, and players are going to have some of these cards in their hand. These cards are going to have different types of influences on them. So we'll see here that this one here is one influence, and it says place one influence on the enforcer. And it's going to have an effect at the bottom that will also resolve. It says place one blackmail token underneath your influence token. So if you were to play this card during the influence phase, you would put it here and you would place one influence onto the enforcer. So you'd find the enforcer and you add an influence to him. You're also going to put a blackmail token there. Now in this case, blackmailing your own person that you influence isn't a great scenario, but if it had been place a token on the racketeer and place a blackmail there, this blackmail token would later allow you to decide whether or not this person can take an action with their mobster. So, you'll play an influence card and add influence. Other influence cards may look like this one. Place 3 influence on the enforcer, and must allow one other player to place 1 influence on any position. So this one's going to let somebody else place. You can have specific types of influence cards. This one says place 3 influence on any type of con man, which is this hat symbol. And you'll see that this one here is a con man, the capo is a con man, the second guy is a con man, and some are con man and gamblers, or some are going to be enforcers. Whatever the case may be, you'll see that they have these different iconographies that will match with the cards that you have in the deck. Other cards may be place 2 influence on any of the gangsters. So this one here is going to let you do it to anybody, and you can play it during certain phases or extra phases at the bottom for some money. But you're going to be using these cards from your hand in order to influence. You'll play around the table once, and everybody will have the chance to influence at least one gangster. And after that, you can start anteing money. Each player will start with $5, and you can pay your money to ante into a pool to force everybody else to pay more money when they want to play more cards. So for example, when I play my second card, I could pay 2 money, and now the next person has to pay at least 2 money in order to play a card. If they don't want to, they can pass, or if they do want to, they can raise the ante by even more, forcing players after them to pay even more. Regardless, when you play cards, they're going to go into this discard pile, you're going to influence the gangsters out here, and you're hopefully going to get influence over them to use them in a later round. Here I've simulated basically the influence placement for a turn, and now we would move on to the crew section because everybody has passed. During the crew, starting at the top, you're going to determine who has influence on each of the gangsters. Now before, pink or red here was the capo, and they had the capo ring. But as soon as black took control of it, they're going to take that ring, and they'll now be the tiebreaker. So black would now have the ring, they're the capo. And you'll see here that black clearly has the most influence. In addition, they're going to get 7 respect for having the most influence. 3 plus 4, 3 on the card, 4 on the board is 7, and they're going to get 7 money, 3 plus 4 money. So they would get 7 victory points, black, and they would get their 7 money in the form of these nice, thick tokens that they would take over into the supply, and they should already have 5, but you get the idea. You'd then move down to the underboss, and orange has control of that, so they would get 5 victory points and 6 money. Here we can see that the counselor is worth 8 to black in terms of victory points or respect, and three money. And you do all of these down the table. So you determine who has control of each. If there's a tie, then the capo gets to decide who has the tiebreaker. And essentially, each person will score the victory points for the guys they control. After you've done that, you're going to go ahead and you're going to get actions with each of the gangsters in reverse order from whoever controls them. So, for example, this guy down here, red or pink, controls him, so he could pay $10 to whack a gangster. He could pay $10 and try and kill off a gangster in any other position, and he'd roll this special die. And depending on what he rolled, the guns are going to be kills. The knife is actually going to kill him, and this is nothing happening. But if he successfully whacks somebody, he's going to get some victory points. They're going to lose some victory points, and essentially he's removed somebody from a position of power. He doesn't have a printed action, so he can't take anything there. This next guy here is going to be able to negate the abilities or the respect, money, and power of a different person here on the board. So they'd put out this negate token, and this negate token is essentially going to mean that that person doesn't get any of that stuff. The first guy here is going to let you remove an influence marker from anywhere. So if you're tied with somebody, for example, right here, you could pull this marker off when you control that guy, and now the blackmail marker is no longer there, and orange clearly controls it. This guy here lets you steal 3 money from somebody, or you'll see that some of these have printed abilities. This one lets you add an influence to somebody of the same level or lower. This one says that the controlling player pays only $7 to reroll dice, which is an effect in the game. So you'll see you either get the printed board ability of these, or you can use the abilities on here, or you can pass and eat a cannoli, which is the questionable reference that they use in the rulebook. But you get the idea. Each person has their own special ability that you can use to manipulate the board status. After you've done that, you're going to go on to the fence here, and you're going to draw cards based on how many people you control. And that's how you're going to replenish your hand of influence cards. Since you'll be playing these in the previous rounds, the more guys you control, the less cards you'll get. The less guys you control, the more cards you'll get. So it's a little bit of an internal balancing factor that's going to let you draw cards to influence gangsters in later rounds. In addition, if you're not drawing a whole lot of cards, you can spend $10 per card to draw extra cards, which is going to help you replenish if you are indeed ahead in the game. After you've moved to the fence, you're going to go on to the feds, and this is going to be a scenario where you're going to arrest gangsters that have drawn too much influence or too much attention. Now, this can happen through the use of neutral markers. It can happen through fights over the gangsters by putting a lot of influence on them, but anybody that has more than a certain number of influence, which is going to change from game to game, is going to get arrested. And so if they have that much influence, they're going to go off to jail here, or prison, and they're going to be moved to that position, and the players that had influence markers on them will get them back. So essentially those gangsters are going to come off of the board and open up new positions. Also, gangsters that have made a move, which is trying to move up against another gangster, which is going to use a different die, they can try and essentially take over their position and swap positions with them, is going to refresh at this point, meaning that they can be activated for ability in a future turn. After you've done the feds, you're going to move on to the families. And what's going to happen here is, let's say that this guy attracted too much attention and he's now in prison. Each player's gotten their markers back, and maybe this guy somehow attracted too much attention, he had too much influence, and those markers are going to be off and the cards are going to be cleared. At this point, you're going to refill all of the positions from the potential candidates. So we'd look here, and we'd see the capo is in charge of these 2 people here. Black currently has the decision of who they want to promote to the underboss, and that's going to come from either the racketeer or the enforcer. So maybe they make a deal with Pink here, and they decide to promote that person. Then we're going to go down and see that the enforcer position is empty, and Pink currently makes the decision between the racketeer and the enforcer, between the first guy and the second guy who's going to fill that position. They could choose the racketeer as well. He could move there. So they have the choice of all 3 of those, and maybe they decide they want to move this guy here. Then we move on to the racketeer position, which is decided by the counselor. And you'll see, likewise, you're going to fill up with all of these arrows, deciding which players can be promoted. If at any time all of the positions are empty, you're going to promote somebody from the next level down, all the way down to these associates who can come into play into the lower positions, or sometimes even all the way up to the bean counter in the first round. So that's how that's going to work, and all of these will replenish. So maybe this guy gets promoted here, this guy scoots over here, and we bring one of these guys up from here, and one fills in over here. At that point, you're going to replenish all of the available spots left on the board, and you're going to move this token down into bookkeeping. And that is 1 full round of the game. After that, you're going to bring in another check mark for the next round. You're going to start, again, with influencing more gangsters to see how you can get victory points. And of course, you're going to accumulate more and more victory points. You're going to have different ways to influence characters, and you're going to try and accumulate money, which will allow you to do various things like draw more cards throughout the game, or whack other gangsters, or place various things on the board. So, hopefully, you'll be able to get the cards you need in order to play out onto the gangsters you want, influence them, and become the capo and have the most respect for your family. I went into this game hoping it was going to be terrible so I could rip it apart. And I wasn't sent a review copy, and I don't know if that was intentional or if, you know, maybe it was just an oversight, but I got a copy through the Gaming Hoopla, which is a convention I went to, and the people there thought it was funny enough to get me a review copy that even though the person who won it kind of wanted the game, they passed it on to me to review. And unfortunately, it's not a bad game. It's actually a pretty good game. So kudos to Tom for designing a good game. The game has that gangster feel, it has that cutthroat feel, and it's organized in a way that everything flows pretty well. You know, you go from placing influence to checking to see who influenced people, to seeing how you can use the abilities from the bottom up, and everything just kind of gels together and gives you the right feel. And so I'm disappointed that I didn't get to tear the game apart. I'm also disappointed that I'm not in the game. There is a deck of cards in the game. All of the gangsters are, of course, famous gaming celebrities. There's Tom and Eric, and of course, I'm left out. But that's okay. I'm not going to give the game a bad review based on that, but everything gels together. The components are top-notch. One complaint, the board. There's arrows on the board that are going all over the place, and they're convenient for helping you figure out what's going on, but they're printed so lightly on the board, they're difficult to see at times. So I think that could have been done a little bit better. But everything else in the game is top-notch. The gameplay is good. It's cutthroat. Everything gels, and the components are top-notch. You can't go wrong with this game. Very good. Definitely suggest checking it out. That is Tom Vasel and Steve Avery's Nothing Personal from Game Salute.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at DicetowerNetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.